All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am super excited to be presenting Black Lives Matter and wow, attracting talent in the era of Black Lives Matter. And it really will be a candid conversation. One of the reasons I wanted to do this is I think we make a lot of assumptions, but I really wanted the Gen Zers and millennials to be able to speak in their own voice, right? I'm Y, so I'm not quite baby boomer, but I think a lot of the conversations that I've been privy to are really focused on those of us who've been out here on the journey for a long time, maybe 20, 30 years. I know I've been working in human resources 25 to 30 years. And while that's great, it really is time for us to pass the proverbial baton because it's really time for the next generation. And contrary to all the stereotypes, especially the negative ones about millennials and Gen Zers, I'm excited. I love their energy. I love their resourcefulness. And we really can learn a lot from them. So just to get you grounded, in case you're not sure what you are, I'm only doing the dates for the millennials. 1981 to 1996, if you were born then, you are officially a millennial. Whoop, whoop, for the millennials. And 1997 through 2012, that makes you Gen Z, okay? So most of our panelists are Gen Z. We have a millennial, and it just was time to have a real dialogue of, I'm a little sad because one of the participants that's missing is a young man who I've known for a few years. He is a millennial, and he is doing a fantastic job in corporate America. But the reality is he didn't know how safe this was, right? And he's like, Dee, I mean, I really want to participate. So he sent me some notes, and he just said, although the company he works with is seeming to do a lot of things, he is concerned about the backlash. So one of the things I need corporate America to understand is people still aren't bringing their whole selves to work, and it's going to take time for that trust to evolve. So, we're excited about the statements. I think acknowledgement is good, but past the statements in the support of Black Lives Matter, people need to see a little bit of action. So I am going to show a quick video to get us grounded, and then we're going to jump right into introductions and questions of this dynamic and fantastic panel. So bear with me as I share my screen. Let's see what I'm doing, which is always fun. I'm not a millennial, so I just play my own TV. So hopefully you can see this.
We can't see it.
Oh, shoot. Okay. All right, so much for screen sharing.
You can hear it though.
You can hear, but you can't see it. Nope. Yeah. I am not a millennial or Gen Z, but I'm going to figure it out. Hold on 1 second. Wait a minute. See, this is why I need Erica, who is my intern.
Yeah, I don't have the video, so otherwise I would have just shared mine, but.
Yeah, that's what I should have done. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Just get rid of it.
Well, you can kind of just explain, because I think I've seen this video that I remember, I recognize the music.
I appreciate you jumping in.
It's essentially a video. It's a montage of images from current Black Lives Matter protests. As we've seen this summer, there's been a very big kind of increase in the movement. A lot of people are kind of waking up, and it's images from contemporary, but it's also images historically, and we know it's very relevant with our great civil rights icon John Lewis passing away, who was part of those initial historical movements and is still, up until his death, was still in the streets. And so it just goes to show that it's 2020, but things still haven't changed. And we still have a lot of work to be done, but there is a lot of movement being done on the ground, a lot of it by young people, millennials and Gen Z. So yeah, that's just kind of what it was about.
Perfect, see? Now that's why I'm excited about millennials and Gen Z. Thank you for that save, Erica. So I'm going to introduce the panel, and I'm just excited because we have some dynamic people that have done a lot of amazing things. The first person I'm going to announce, and just raise your hands so they see your name, is Chandler Hooten. He is currently studying his master's degree at Harvard and in higher education. He's won the Student Leadership Mentor Award and more accolades than I can talk about. But what I'm going to do as I introduce them, I'm going to let them answer the first question, which was, how has the BLM or the Black Lives Matter movement impacted you? And welcome, Chandler.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Deloria. So the BLM movement, I think, has really started a dialogue within my community and within my friend groups and social groups from college. I just graduated in May, and while I did study education in women's and gender studies and was able to have conversations around race and race relations within those classes, I am now able to have those conversations with a wider variety of people outside of people who have that focus academically.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. All right. Next, I'll introduce Mr. Clayton Covington, who's currently a research associate at Duke University. What I found fascinating, though, is he participated in a research project on the historical context of LGBTQ in Jamaica. So we don't have time for that today, but I'm sure that was fascinating. Could you tell us about the impact of Black Lives Matter on you?
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you for the introduction, Deloria. And I just want to preface and say I'm really grateful to everyone on the panel and Authentic Culture and Engagement Solutions for putting this together. And that while I am going to be candid, that my views only represent my own and not that of my employer. So just want to.
That's a disclaimer, okay.
Yeah. But I think when it comes to thinking about the impact of Black Lives Matter and the movement for Black Lives, for me, coming from a predominantly white suburb for the majority of my childhood, it actually provided a lot of clarity to the experiences that I thought were just my own, because I was so used to being the only Black person in so many spaces. And when I saw a collective community of folks who had backgrounds like mine, backgrounds different than mine, but all recognizing that we had this collective struggle and voicing that and, giving it life in a way that I thought it needed, because I feel like so much Black life is, not given the same dignity of other lives. For me, it was super clarifying and empowering. And so I think now it's giving us the opportunity to not only empower ourselves, but also convey to other people why our lives matter, and how they can assist us in the efforts to make sure that we have, justice, not just in these loose terms, but also in actual life outcomes and realities.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Next, I will introduce Miss Lizzie Kehoe, who is a recent graduate of WashU in gender studies and also of Spanish and environmental studies, and is passionate about intersectionality. So can you answer the question about the impact on you? Oh, wait, you're okay.
Got it. Sorry. Thank you, Deloria. Yeah, I think, especially in reflecting upon the lack of, not being involved in BLM in 2016, and with the resurgence of the movement and different protests across the country, really getting involved in local movements in my own community, and in New Orleans, and similar to Chandler, really having to have hard conversations with my family about why I'm attending protests and why it's important to get my body as a white person on the line, and I think similarly to what Chandler was saying, having to take these intellectual conversations that I had at school, about race and about gender and about the intersections of class and race and gender and everything, and really having to know why I personally cared, and why there is personal stake in this movement now for me. And I think then really getting people who hadn't felt that personal stake too involved in the movement now as well.
Yeah, there was a sign that I saw that really resonated with me, and it said, white silence equals violence, right? And so that really did resonate, because this is something that really is going to impact all of us. All right, thanks for sharing. All right, I'm next introducing Miss Nidhi Krishnan. She is the youngest of the Gen Zers, as she is still attending college. I think she's a rising sophomore at Washington University. So if you would share the impact of Black Lives Matter to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me first. But I would really echo Chandler's sentiment about being able to have conversations outside of the people that I usually have conversations about racial equity with. Like I am, to my friends, I'm kind of known as the person who brings up race and other social justice issues. So it was nice for the first time in my life to kind of not be out of place in the one kind of raising this to the agenda, but surrounded by people who are more receptive to the concerns or the issues that I might bring up in normal conversations. So that's been definitely a very impactful part of Black Lives Matter, but especially in my case, I'm Indian American. So it's been nice for the first time really in my life to see the Asian American community kind of take some accountability and recognize that, yes, we're people of color, but we also benefit from a lot of the same patterns of structural racism that white people do. So I've really been able to plug into those conversations with the Asian American community due to this movement. So yeah.
Perfect, perfect. All right. And let's see, last but definitely not least, I am happy to introduce Erica Williams, who I feel so blessed to have her. She just started as an intern for Authentic Culture and Engagement Solutions and already is making huge impact, of a recent graduate of Washington University in women, gender studies, and also neuroscience. So she's going to help a lot with this unconscious bias that we all are dealing with. So thanks for everything you've done so far, Erica, and would you share the impact on yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for that introduction. I do think that I can echo a lot of actually Clayton's sentiments about coming from predominantly white communities. And, there's the whole story about that of, the Black middle class of our parents' generation kind of getting out, and then it kind of impacts negatively in some ways for our generation. And so I think it's been really interesting when we talk about unconscious bias, and that's something that people are really trying to reckon with now. When they're realizing that it's you can still you can say all the things, but you can still have these biases, and it's not just in white communities, it's in Black communities too, and we have to reckon with that. And so that's something that it's been really great to have conversations inside my family. It's been great to have conversations inside my community that I haven't been able to, and it's been great to find ways of kind of coalition building and just having these tough dialogues and finding ways to reach people with compassion, but also with honesty. And so, yeah, it's been great for me.
All right. Well, thank you. I have some other questions. And so just jump in if this was the question that you felt the most passionate about. So the next questions are, what are your expectations from corporate America?
So I think I kind of like that question a bit. I think for me, one of my biggest expectations is that if I work for a company, if I'm giving my skills, myself, my knowledge, my abilities to a company, I would want them to value my life. And a part of that comes with showing that and not just saying that in very loose terms. And so it is, making stances, but it goes beyond that. It's about, integrating in a very holistic way diversity, equity, and inclusion into the structural framework of these organizations. And there are practical ways to do that, and a lot of it has to do with being intentional. And so that intentionality is really what matters, because without that, your impact it's going to create negative impacts in one way or the other. So I think that's something that I really expect from organizations, is to not sit on the sidelines, to have a voice and have an active voice and advocate for the people of color, underrepresented, marginalized groups within the organization in ways that are actually going to make a difference.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, we like the acknowledgement, but that's just the start. We actually have to make a difference. And how can you bring your whole self to work and want to contribute if you feel like the company doesn't really care about you? Makes a lot of sense. All right. Have your expectations changed in light of the Black Lives Matter movement? Whose expectations have changed?
I think that it's safe to say that these conversations are more commonplace today, not just socially, but also just with others, even in a work environment. And so I think that there is more pressure and more of an expectation that conversations around race, gender, class are going to and really have to happen within the workplace as well, right? Because that's how you're going to be authentic, is by having these conversations and things that we are passionate about and being able to bring those to work with us. And so I think that it's important to hear from corporate America intentional action steps that are being taken to incorporate conversations and dialogues around these power structures within the workplace.
Perfect. All right. What is something that you all would like corporate America to know they've gotten wrong about generalizations regarding millennials and or Generation Z?
So one thing that I think is really difficult as a bunch of either people currently in, doing their undergraduate degrees or recently finishing their undergraduate degrees is that when you're a young person in a workplace, especially if you're the youngest, I feel like there's this overlying assumption of like either you being like, I don't know, like grossly incompetent or extremely needy. And I think that, as you said at the beginning, Deloria, that I found that my peers around my age, and a little bit older, were extremely resourceful and really eager to learn and really, committed to building our skill sets. And so I think that, that assumption in and of itself is an issue, but I think in tandem, I think a lot of us internalize that. So a lot of us, when we're in these spaces, whether they be educational or in corporate America, we deal with imposter syndrome. And I think that it's really important for our, our employers, our supervisors, our collective teammates to help remind us that we belong in the spaces that we are, to affirm us, to praise us when we're doing well, and to guide us when we can be doing better. Because I feel like that assumption paired with imposter syndrome can lead to a not so good trajectory in the workplace. And I think that's really preventable if we're really intentional about, affirming in our places where we are, and not letting our assumptions get in the way of recognizing the human dignity behind every person we interact with, whether they be, a client, a coworker, or a supervisee.
Great. No, I mean, I agree because I know I did a similar thing with millennials when I was at Charles Schwab, and it was funny. A lot of the employees said of, the millennials, they were like, we're here and everybody treats us like we don't know anything yet because we're the youngest. Yet when you're not watching, all of the older employees are coming to us for advice, especially technology help. And so recognize what we're doing and the contributions we're making. And it's true. I mean, I think that's how we all learn from each other. There are a lot of things already I'm learning from Erica and vice versa. So nobody has a monolith on knowledge, right? Everybody has different things to share. And it's going to behoove all of us to be willing to share with one another. All right. Another question is, let's see. What would attract you to join a company today? What would attract you to join a company today?
I think,
No, you go for it, Edie.
okay. So I think that for me, although I haven't formally entered the workforce, I can speak to my experience with my internships. I've been interning this summer, and for me, what's been a really nice part of this in tandem with the Black Lives Matter movement is that like the part about what you had said about bringing your whole self to work and feeling safe with that. I'm in St. Louis for the summer, so I've been going to a lot of protests where things have gotten pretty militant on the side of the police. And sometimes, you don't know whether there have been arrests at protests, or you don't know whether you'll be able to come into work the next day and just kind of pretend like everything's normal. So at first, for me, during my internships, I was really debating whether it was safe for me to actually talk about these protests. And when people would ask me, how was my weekend, or what did I do during the weekend, I would be inclined to make up a different answer because I didn't know if that was something that you could talk about at work. But it's been really encouraging for me to be able to kind of share those experiences with my coworkers and not face retaliation. So I think that having that open environment in any business or company would be something that really would attract me to want to work at that company.
Perfect. Thank you. Lizzie, what were you going to share?
Yeah, I was just going to, I have similar thoughts as Needy for sure, but also I think in hearing about these conversations, and especially the kind of call on white people to hold other white people accountable in these conversations and in this movement and in anti-racist work, I think what would attract me to a company is a company understanding how it needs to be holding other companies accountable and needs to be holding corporate America accountable, really, and some acknowledgement of, you know, the ills of capitalism, obviously. And so I think, kind of adding on to Erica's previous point, that intentionality and that sort of honesty, I feel like is something that has been missing from corporate America in general, and something that I'd like to see in the future.
Perfect, perfect. We wanted to leave about 10 minutes for questions, but is there a final word of encouragement to corporate America and recruiters looking to attract you? And I think you all covered it a little bit, but does anybody else have any final words that you just want corporate America or any organization looking to attract your generation? What do you think? Because feedback is a gift. Is there anything we want to share that we think they need to know? And then we'll open up for questions.
I would say don't be afraid to engage Millennials and Gen Z in a review of practices, whether it be company culture or hiring. I think that, you know, as you've given us the opportunity today, Deloria, to talk about our perspectives, I think it's important that we be able to bring them into the corporate world and be able to contribute these thoughts in an effort to make a better company culture.
Absolutely. Anybody else? All right.
Yeah, I think that for me, we've been talking a lot about company culture and kind of like everyday interactions with employees and individual interactions. But I think that my message would be that we also have to look at structural actions of companies, like where you locate. Are you locating in a place that reinforces geographical segregation? Or are you trying to locate in new places? You can look at your family leave policy to see if that's being conducive and open with your employees. You can look at things like that at a structural level to make sure that you are supporting your employees and not just engage in this conversation about racial equity from like an individual company culture point of view, but also from like a structural point of view.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, we have a question. It says, recruiters often say we can't find qualified new hires. Where do we go? I don't think they're looking in the right places. I'll just be very transparent because I've been at the end of a lot of these conversations. We can't find anybody. Well, who are you looking for, right? And if you're looking for Black employees in this case, I mean, that's where HBCUs are. So I think that even though it may be true that they can't, it really depends on where you're looking. Because if you're going to the same places, similar to what Needy is saying, where you're located, then you have built in something systemically that is going to disparately impact the minorities you say you're looking for. So once you become serious about it, then there are ways that you can figure it out and go places where the probability will be higher. And of course, then people say, oh, we don't want to lower qualifications. Nobody is saying that. Diversity and talent are not mutually exclusive, right? So it's really about telling yourself the truth about where are you finding talent? What are the pipelines you go to? Have you created internships? And how are you also marketing yourself? So, I mean, they're there, but it's like, are you going in the right places? I used to say, it was a mom's neighborly saying. It said, if you always do what you always did, then you always get what you always got, right? So it's grammatically incorrect, but very profound. Quit doing the same things that are ineffective and saying, we don't know what's going on. Anybody else want to weigh in on that question? Go ahead, Clay.
Yeah, I can add, because for the first time in my life, I'm the oldest person on the panel. And so I've been in the workforce going now into my second year, so I'm still relatively new. But I like this question, but one of the things that I would challenge with this question is maybe what are we thinking of as qualified? I think that sometimes our working definitions are a little bit problematic. And so the example I'll give is that, you know, I mentioned earlier that yes, I'm a Black man, but I'm a Black man who grew up in predominantly white spaces, and I've never really left those. That's kind of been my whole experience up to this point. But in going to my undergraduate at Washington University, I just met so many different types of Black people who had so many different types of experiences. But I noticed that our abilities to navigate a place like Washington University, a predominantly white institution, greatly differed because of our backgrounds, right? Where maybe I'm taken more seriously because of my accent, because of the way that I show up in certain spaces than one of my really good friends who's from the South Side of Chicago, right? That doesn't make her any less intelligent, doesn't make her any less qualified. She's just a different person with different experiences, right? But I feel like because I've been in so many of these spaces for such a long time, I'm a palatable Black person. And I try to be super aware of that, you know? And it's a hard truth to reconcile with, but I think it's about having these hard conversations with ourselves about what are our biases, where even if my resume looks identical to someone's name who is like, I don't know, Jamal, right? You may have assumptions about him that you wouldn't have about me because I have an Anglo-Saxon name, you know? And so I think that, again, I would remind that I think a lot of us go in not even thinking we're qualified. I can tell you that with my current positions that I've had, you know, I currently have an appointment at Duke University. I previously worked at Cornell University. I did not think I was qualified in the slightest for those roles, but I was told to apply and told to push, but I needed other people to encourage me. And so I think that knowing that a lot of people are already questioning themselves, if employers are intentional about, you know, being enthusiastic about recruiting people from different backgrounds and checking their own biases in the process, I think you can be more successful in recruiting a wider range and diverse set of people.
Perfect. We have another question, and it's for the panel. How important is seeing a diverse team of leaders in any organization you go to work in? How important is that?
I can take this one. It's interesting because when I think about diversity of people within an organization, I'm not just thinking about the upper management, but I think about middle management. I'm thinking about all layers of the organization. You should have people of diverse backgrounds in all parts of it because they're making meaningful changes and meaningful contributions at all parts of the organization. And so to me, it is a really big thing. And it's even beyond corporate America. It's even a really big thing for me as somebody looking to potentially go to graduate school and looking at graduate school programs, for example. Just not to get too away from the subject, but thinking about who's tenure track at the program, and if there are no people of color that are tenure track, then that makes me question why. And it makes me question, especially if they're there, then why is there no upward mobility for these kind of like academic types? So that's just one way. Of course, I'm just now starting off getting my foot in the door in kind of corporate America type things. But my experiences in educational sectors, my experiences, even just in brands and stuff that I consume, I'm very much more willing to go for a brand that is really supportive and actually shows that in their employee base of diverse backgrounds than I am.
Makes sense. Anybody else?
White, I guess. But singularly focused.
Right. No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think everybody, I mean, social media is a gift in that you find out who's sincere, who's making faux pas, and a lot of clients now and potential employees vote with their feet. You know, I'm not going to buy this brand because of this statement that was made, or I'm not going to do this. So we're all looking. And I think one of the gentlemen that wasn't on the panel because he wasn't sure it was safe said, you know, I'm hearing all these statements, but when I look at the board makeup, it's still all white men. So I need to see a change, because until that change happens, I'm hearing a lot of words, but I don't have a lot of trust. So any other final comments? We wanted to make sure we stayed on time, and it's actually 12:30. So does anybody have any final comments? I just want to thank you all for being so transparent, for being authentic, and for letting your voices be heard. And I just want you to know that your voices are valued. And even if you feel like you can't speak, because we need to hear from you. There's so much wisdom that you all need to impart on us. And even if you're not asked, kind of insert yourself. So I'm appreciative. I get it. And I think a lot of companies are, they're doing stuff called reverse mentoring. because we're trying to move forward, and there's a lot of things that you all have that we need. So I just think this is a great panel. I'm sure everyone who's participated has seen the value, the knowledge, and the potential. I mean, I feel great that I can retire soon, okay? Because I know that I've passed that proverbial baton into the hands of qualified, empathetic, understanding, and powerful young people. So just thank you. And to everyone who participated or signed in, there's a small survey that you'll get afterwards, but be authentic, transparent, and we appreciate your participation. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Deloria.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.